Are you a man looking for an intensive program to help you overcome your sexually addictive behaviors? Gateway to Freedom is your answer. Gateway to Freedom is a 3-day intensive workshop for men seeking to overcome sexually addictive behaviors. Whether married, single, or divorced, Gateway to Freedom will help men regain hope for a new life of purity and real contentment. The workshop is conducted by experts in the field of sexual addiction recovery. Your experts have over 35 years of combined experience. Read testimonials of workshop alumni at gatewaymen.com. Get all the info and register online at gatewaymen.com or call 1-800-49-PURITY.
Hi, my name is Jonathan, and I'm the founder of the Gateway to Freedom Workshop. I want to personally invite you to be part of our next intensive coming up December 5th through the 7th. So call us today at 1-800-49-PURITY or visit gatewaymen.com.
Welcome to Pure Sex Radio, training men, educating women. Are you ready to get real and start living each day in purity? This dynamic program is designed to educate, encourage, and equip listeners with the tools necessary for living a life of sexual purity. Pure Sex Radio brings you the best in mobile talk radio. Listen to real-life struggles, learn how to overcome lust, pornography, and sex addiction, and get serious about purity.
Good day, radio listeners. Welcome to this week's edition of the Pure Sex Radio broadcast. We're glad to have you here with us. My name is Jonathan, and we're excited to have back again for another week Phillip Telfer. Hey, Phillip.
Well, I'm glad to be here again. This has been great.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to this. I feel like we've been having some great conversations. I feel like we've been able to sort of dig into this issue of media and sort of how it not only affects us, but how we might be able to start addressing it in a new way. And in last week's broadcast, we were able to get a little bit into the idea of a media fast and kind of a media diet. I'd like for us to maybe pull that apart a little bit more and kind of get under the hood and look at it a little bit, because I feel like we might have left our listeners with, kind of whetting their appetite, but then going, well, what could you give me a little bit more specifics about maybe what a media fast looks like or could look like, and maybe what a media diet looks like, what cleaning the house looks like, and then maybe we could talk about this issue of, which we very briefly touched on, about some of the other things that we might can only discover through doing a media fast, which is the amount of time and maybe self-focus that have been part of that media consumption. So why don't we go into breaking this apart a little bit more?
Well, I think one of the important things is to bring up a passage in the Bible. 2 Corinthians 10 talks about warfare. And it says the weapons of our warfare are not carnal.
Mm-hmm.
But it talks about in that we are to take every thought captive to the obedience of Jesus Christ. So we know that part of the battle is taking thoughts captive, not just letting things passively enter our minds and not process them.
Right.
And the word, a lot of people don't think about the word amusement or amuse. And so if I was to ask most audiences that I speak to, what does amuse mean? They scratch their heads. They say, well, it means to entertain, or, they'll come up with some ideas. But they're usually shocked when I tell them, well, let me break it down for you. The word muse means to think deeply about something or to think about something at length. So you put an A in front of it, it makes it a negative. Amuse literally means to not think. And so, when God in His Word teaches that we need to take every thought captive, no doubt then part of the battlefront that we're facing is a culture that's either going to be thinking deeply about things, or we're going to be just passively consuming things, amusing ourselves without taking those thoughts captive. And our documentary, which we'd mentioned in the previous broadcast, Captivated, we base that on Colossians 2:8, which says, the Apostle Peter's writing to the church, he's saying, or the Apostle Paul says, do not be taken captive by philosophy or empty deception. according to the elementary principles of men rather than according to God.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting about that, if you think about the philosophers, we talked about media's influence on the brain and young children and even adults. We've talked about other things. But even if you talk about philosophy and what's going in, the philosophers in the first century were itinerant speakers. They would go around from place to place. And, the church was being warned, you got to be careful because what they're teaching is not always right.
Mm-hmm.
Paul would have never imagined that there would come a day where the philosophers would be invited into the home.
Right.
In fact, assigned one per child when we have more TVs than children per household, or, connected devices. That's what we have to be. So this comes to the subject of what we call media literacy, and it does affect when we talk about a media fast or a media diet. Media literacy is required to be taught in a lot of even the government schools, but not from a biblical worldview. That idea of literacy means understanding that all media has a message, and those messages have an impact in our life. So even the secularist would agree that yes, all media does have a message, and those messages have an impact. Now, what kind of impact is it happening? So let's talk about some of the practical things, some of the action steps. We talked about a media fast. Now, I shared my own story where I decided I was going to go for 2 weeks without anything. Mm-hmm. Well, I was 17. I wasn't running a business. I didn't have access to the internet. There were different factors involved, and I had a life at the time that could easily just say, you know what, I can function perfectly fine without any of these things. I did have to get a little creative because my family had gotten into the bad habit of eating our meals around television, prime time. And so that was kind of become the standard in our house.
Yeah.
Like many households, we don't want to miss our favorite show, so we're not eating a meal around a table together. And so when it came to mealtime during those 2 weeks, I would excuse myself to my bedroom. I wouldn't eat with my family because they were eating around the television. And they were a little upset at me because they maybe thought Philip was being a little goody two-shoes or something. Mm-hmm. But in the long run, I had to start making decisions. How is this going to work? Now, for people today, it's very challenging. So a media fast may mean carving out time 1 day a week. It might be, I think Michael Medved, has what he calls a media Sabbath day. Mm-hmm, so they have 1 day a week where it's like there's no TV, there's no internet. We're just going to unplug and take a Sabbath.
Yeah.
And that's what it may mean, carving out some time in your evening to say, hey, between this hour and this hour, we're going to turn it all off. We're not going to have the TV on. We're going to get around the table. We're going to eat a meal together. We're going to play a game, a board game together. We're going to do some things that are non-electronic. So it's going to be different. But another thing also that I began doing during that time was reading more, and especially the Bible.
And I want to get into that a little bit. But one of the things that I think you're really pointing out here is, even in the Bible, when it talks about a food fast, there are variations.
Yes. Even
about food. There is like a total fast. There is sort of like fruits and vegetable kind of. There's different kinds of fasting even with food. And so I think the principle there can also be applied to media. Now, where the delineation is, I think, is those things that are below that line of what would be rat poison.
Yes.
Like the toxins. We're not saying, you know what, guys, you're looking at pornography every week. Listen, just take 1 day a week off from pornography. The rest of the day, no. There are certain things that we say there is a moral component to it. There is a very clear line that God has drawn that says whatever consumption of that is bad, even 1%. I think we're talking over here more about the things that would not necessarily be considered the immoral aspects of media, but simply, are you thinking through that media literacy? Are you thinking through like your media choices? Are you thinking through the time that you're spending in media? Because I think sometimes when you start saying even the word fast, people only think of a total fast. And it sort of overwhelms people. I think some people you'll have maybe a smaller percentage, but you'll have some people, and I'm sure there are people in our audience even now, that their heart is being quickened. There's something they're desiring that total fast. I think for the majority of our listeners, they're kind of saying, how can I almost feel like I need to test the waters here. This is a little scary. And I don't know how to enter that. And so I think you talking about sort of this partial fast or being able to work that out is healthy.
And having done this for 10 years, speaking across the country, one of the common questions when talking about a media fast would be, look, I mean, I work in IT. You know, I talk to men. I'm like, I'm in front of a computer all day. I'm like, well, that's legitimate. You know, so in fact, most people, I work in front of a computer a lot of part of the day as my work. You know, so there's a certain amount. So what helps break this down a little more is to talk about our elective time.
Right.
And obviously, a child is going to have more elective time. They don't have a full-time job. They have school.
Right.
But aside from that, their time is more elective. A parent, we still have elective time. So when we have elective time, how are we using that time? And so we encourage families not just to go on the fast. That's only part of it. But we talk about replacing versus taking away. Like, don't just turn off the TV. What are you going to do with that time that's even more meaningful? And I think some of the things that you would learn even in a completely secular humanistic culture that could recognize some of these things. I've seen some of the public service announcements when it comes to helping keep your kids off drugs. You know what one of the things they say can help keep your kids off drugs?
What?
Have a meal together as a family.
Ding, 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 right? Yeah.
You know, it's like they get it. It's like
Right,
relational. Yeah. Hey, get around the table. Spend some time interacting with one another. Even around a meal, it could be as simple as that. But also, when's the last time you sat down and played a board game? Now, here's where the rubber meets the road. It is actually more energy consuming to play the board game than to sit passively in front of television or a movie or the internet on your favorite social network site or however you're going to fritter away your time. I recognize that. You know, when my kids want to play a board game, I'm thinking, oh, I have to invest now. You know, X amount of time. We got to dish.
You can't passively do that.
Yeah, I got to dig the box out. I mean, I even like the game so much, but they love the game. And now I'm realizing that this is more work for me. But what's the long-term benefit? And so our default in America, and this is how I grew up, this is how you grew up, our default, and I believe all of your listeners will relate to this, when we don't know what to do with ourselves, when we don't have vision, direction, purpose, we default to media, to being just passive consumers. That's who we are. That's how we've been trained. So when you don't have things that you are intentional at doing, we will always default. So it's going to take some intentionality, and that's more difficult. It's much easier to just let the kids go sit in front of the video game console or to watch the movie than to say, hey, we're actually going to make a trip to the zoo, or we're going to go create something. So I'll give you a real world example here. And this would probably be for maybe a future. If you have me back again, we can talk about video games. But just in our household, that's something that we don't spend our time doing. But I don't just say no to my kids, say no video games. We say yes to so many others. We have a wood shop. My 17-year-old, my 13-year-old all create stuff in the wood shop. They sell it. They love to do it. We go to conferences on how to get better at wood turning. And then another hobby my son and I have been into is building RC airplanes. We build them out of foam from scratch. We learn how to, get the wood glue out or get the foam glue out, and we get the electronics and learn. We do some fun stuff together, and I spend time. That's a lot harder than just passively watching something on a screen. But I believe the long-term benefit. So whatever it is, you have to be creative, and it may even cost you more.
Right. Well, you know what? And I liken this to an experience that I've gone through just recently in terms of my health and food choices. I had gotten to a point, and this is something I've been struggling with for the last couple of years that I never struggled with previously in my life, and that was I'd gotten up to the highest weight I'd ever been. Now, some people could have looked at me and said, he's 6'4", he doesn't look overweight. But regardless, when you're at the highest weight that you've ever weighed, you don't feel like you. I mean, you feel like you're a different person. And my knees were hurting. I was starting to have joint back problems, all kinds of stuff. And so I decided to, I watched this documentary that really kind of opened my eyes to health choices, not necessarily weight loss in and of itself. And I realized I am consuming unhealthy stuff. So I went on a 5-day juice fast and lost 8 pounds. And actually, since August, I'm down 22 pounds from where I was. My knees are thanking me. But here's the thing I learned, and it kind of relates to what you're talking about the fast. I could have just done this juice fast and thought, you know what, that's all it takes for me to get healthy. No, that's all it took for me to lose 8 pounds. But to get healthy, it's what you do after the fast, those choices that you make after that are either going to continue you on that pathway of better health, whether it be food or media, or if you make choices that go back to your old stuff, guess what? If I just went back to the former way of my eating habits and all those kind of things, there's a great likelihood not only those 8 pounds are going to come back, but a lot more eventually over time. And so I have found in our ministry especially, there are so many parallels between a life of sexual purity and a life of physical health. Like
Yes.
in the food and sex go together really well in terms of how they relate to one another. And so I think in our vein here, media then is one of those things that attaches over to this area of sexuality and those kind of things.
Yes.
But it makes a difference. A lot of guys think, if I just stop looking at porn, then I'll automatically be this healthy, pure person. And it's very different from that. So I think you're connecting in a way with our listeners that they're realizing a media fast has a benefit for kind of cleansing the toxins, maybe getting some clarity, but then it's what you do after that that really makes a difference for where you go forward.
Yeah, it can kind of help kickstart some thinking.
Yeah.
But you have to live from day to day, and it's going to be in a media-saturated world, and you're going to have to learn not only how to navigate this carefully as an adult, but even if you have children, to teach them how to navigate this. And one of the things, so we use the term diet. We use food analogies just like you're using here. So we use that fast it's a food analogy. And so we use diet as a food analogy. And recently, the government came out with their new recommended,
daily allowance.
It used to be the pyramid. It was
Right, yeah.
really dorky looking, and they finally realized that we got to get a 2.0 version. And so now if you've seen it, it's more slick. It's a plate. It's like what's on. It's called My Plate. And I think that's also a good example. What's on my plate, and is it a balanced plate? So it doesn't mean that plate is not going to include watching a movie on occasion, or spending time doing stuff, interacting with social media. But is it balanced? And so when we talk about a media diet, what I'm talking about is ongoing discernment. And you can actually, if you're playing Boggle, you can get diet out of discernment. All the letters are there. So
Yes.
we just try to make that connection. So to equate media diet with media discernment. The Bible says in Hebrews, solid food is for the mature. It's using a food analogy.
Right, yeah.
Who because of practice have their senses trained to discern good from evil. So this is part of the training, and it's a process. It's ongoing. I'm learning. Every year I'm learning. So here's some of the things. I've kind of alliterated this by some things that will help parents using M's, when it comes to the media diet. And the first thing is to model it. Model media discernment. If you're a parent and you're saying, how can I help my child? Well, before you begin to do anything else, you've got to be modeling it in your own life. Otherwise, they're going to see right through the hypocrisy. So if mom and dad, or maybe you're a single parent, if mom is on social media during her elective time, during that non-work hours, and that's all they see is mom on the iPad or in front of the TV all the time, that's going to speak more than anything you teach them. So we do have to model it. That's probably the hardest hill to climb, to model that. But once we're modeling it, then we do need to mentor. Mentoring is important, and we need to mentor our children to be able to teach them the whys, not just don't do this, don't do that, but why these things are important in their life. So mentor. The other one is once again with the diet analogy, is moderate, moderation. Or even when you say moderate, you could actually say moderate. And so as a parent, you're moderating things because you want the right moderation. You want that balanced plate.
Yeah, you want to help them with the balancing of their plate.
So the portions, and when you're, when little kids, you help them with what's on their plate.
And I'll just throw out one thing that we do that might be helpful to some parents out there. Like during the school year, Monday through Thursday are no media nights for our kids. So that helps them because, hey, during the school year, focus is on schoolwork and those kind of activities and stuff. So that's just one little thing that we've done to moderate the portions. It's like, hey, on the weekends, we can watch some movies, television programs, things like that. But Monday through Thursday, it's no media.
Yes, that's right. And also, you have varying ages. And so there also is an issue with age appropriateness.
Sure, absolutely.
One of the programs we're developing right now in our ministry in regard to internet, because we have a lot of, which crosses over to your ministry, we have a lot of people asking us, how do you do this as a parent, with the internet and pornography. And so we use the analogy of like a getting a driver's license, and so we call it driver's ed for the World Wide Web. This idea that there's a time where a child is observing. My children have been in cars since the time they were born, but they're not going to drive a car until they're 15 or 16 years old. And that they won't do until after they've received training, understand the rules of the road, know why it's dangerous to get behind the wheel of a car, know how to keep themselves safe. And then there's going to be a period of time where they're being monitored. You monitor how they're driving. And when they can pass the test, the goal in any driver's education program is not so that they can just get a license. This isn't about a license to consume media or be on the web. This is about learning how to be my mind just went blank there. What we try to say is trying to be a collision-free driver.
Right.
So when you don't want your kid just to get a license.
Right.
You want them to stay collision-free. You don't want them to take the car out when they get their license and crash it.
It lines up with your idea of having discernment. You want a driver that can discern between, when they're at that stop sign, is that car far enough away for me to make this turn, or do I need to wait? The discernment is to know how to drive the vehicle,
And so that, in this media diet, that does include monitoring. Just like a parent is going to have to monitor their child's driving when they're in that learner's permit stage. You're going to have to, and it's a lot of hard work. Now, that's why paring down, making sure your portions are the right size, is easier to monitor. If your child's consuming 7.5 hours of media a day, that's a lot of media to monitor. So if you're doing stuff like you do in your household to say, hey, we have these kind of media-free zones during the school year, that makes monitoring a lot easier. And so that's good. But the other thing we encourage people to do is to move closer to actual relationships. And so that would be moving closer to God, and that would also be moving closer to their children. And we have to get past this misnomer that emerged in the 50s when TVs came into the home, and now other media. It's not just television now. TV's still iconic.
Right, sure.
But so we use TV as kind of that iconic poster child of media.
Symbol of media, yeah.
So, but nevertheless, that idea that somehow media is going to bring us closer together, it has become more of a distraction. It's driven a wedge between
It's become more
families.
pronounced, actually, in social media that we're less social than ever.
Yes.
Because people are doing and saying and things on social media that they might never conceive to do or think or say in a face-to-face relationship. And a lot of times they're able to present a persona that's not even who they really are.
That's right. So
there's not any authenticity very much in social media.
And that's part of that replacing versus taking away. You're not just moving away from the screen. You want to be moving towards real relationships. Right. The other one is to the motivation. Motivate others, especially your children or maybe peers, People in your church that say, well, why are you doing this? Why are you on a media fast? Or why are you regulating some of these things in your life? And you have to help them understand what is the motivation is to pursue Christ. I'm fixing my eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher. I want to run a race, and I understand that there are some stumbling blocks along the way. And so I want to have the right goal, and that's something I always put in front of my children to say, you know what, Mom and Dad are making these rules or regulating these things in our house, not because we're trying to make life more difficult for you. It's because we want to motivate you to pursue Christ.
Yeah.
And we don't want you to be unnecessarily distracted by things that we can minimize. The last two things that we really encourage in this media diet is to mediate as a parent in prayer. We can't neglect prayer. To ask the Lord for wisdom, to ask Him for help, to pray for our family, to ask God's wisdom and blessing in the things that we're doing. And that would resolve a lot of things. If you have some question about, wow, is this toxic media or not? Is this something you could pray about, just like a meal?
Right,
Lord,
yeah.
bless this meal. Could we say that about the media we're going to consume? Could we actually turn our eyes to God and say, we want you to be a part of this,
Right.
just like we would with a meal around the table. And if we're recognizing, like, well, I don't know if I could really pray that. I don't know if I could invite God to be a part of this right now. Well, that's a good indicator. When we didn't get into this, but when we talked about toxic media, some people ask me, well, how do you define toxic media? I said, well, how would you love if I pointed you to an expert that has discerned every toxic media possible and, has that list? I don't have it, but if I pointed you to that person, would you want that? They all say, yes, we want the list. I said, okay, write this name down. And so the listeners, if you're driving, don't write this down. But, if you can write something down, write this down. Holy Spirit.
Right, exactly.
Here it is. And people are like, oh, you got us. No, I didn't get you.
That's the truth.
That's the only place you're going to get that list. And it's a perfect list, but it's going to require a relationship with Him, and you're going to have to ask Him. And I believe that if we're not asking the Holy Spirit, then we're not going to get those answers. And the other thing is to be meditating on God's Word. That's one of the things that I began, even though I grew up in a Christian home. When I was 17 and I went on my first media fast, it occurred to me, I've grown up in the church. I've never read the Bible from cover to cover.
Right.
So I am going to make it a goal. And I even chose not to read anything other than the Bible in my elective reading. I was still finishing up high school, so there was required reading. But if it wasn't required for school, then my elective reading was always the Bible, and I wasn't going to read anything else until I'd finished it from cover to cover. And that established a habit in my life. Now every year, I at least read through the Bible once a year, if not more than that. In fact, we have a Media Talk 101 challenge that people can find in our action steps of our website, where we have a reading plan where you can read through the Bible in 101 days, and it only takes 45 minutes a day. So I've done that for 6 years in a row. Just finished it last week. So just meditating on God's Word.
And I would argue, too, that these things that you have listed here in the media diet can be expanded beyond just a parent-child relationship. I believe as brothers and sisters in Christ,
yes,
these are the very things we are to challenge one another about. There's nothing wrong in a group of believers to say, we need to monitor one another's media choices, and we need to maybe moderate some. We're called to serve one another, bear one another's burdens, pray for one another, confess our sins to one another, love one another. So I would challenge our listeners to think in that regard. Are you in a group of people who are encouraging you toward better choices, not just in your media, but in your life as a believer? If you're not, call us. We want to connect with you and help you get into places where you can be encouraged in that way. We are out of time, Philip, but I thank you for your time. Thanks for your ministry. Listeners, if you want to get more information about Philip's ministry, just go to MediaTalk101.org. It's MediaTalk101.org, and they've got lots of resources there, and even some of the information that was shared here today. We're glad you've been with us, and we'll see you back here again next week on the Pure Sex Radio broadcast.
Pure Sex Radio is paid for by Be Broken Ministries. Visit us online at puresexradio.com.